Okay, Ron, we're live. I know we're friends, but I appreciate you sitting down with me. I know you're busy. You were actually the first friend I made here in Knoxville.
Is that right?
Yeah, at the coffee shop. I was wearing the Buzz Aldrin sweater.
Oh, that's right. Because of the sweater. That's been a couple years now, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. It's been about 2 years. I was 26 at the time, and I remember because I just moved here. My mom had asked, she was like, "Did you meet any friends?" And I'm like, "Oh, you won't believe who I met."
I met this old fart. You wouldn't believe how.
That's what I said. Because she was like, "How old is this guy?" I'm like, "Oh, he's in his 60s." She's like, "Well, you're not gonna meet people your own age." I'm like, "No, you got to meet him. Like, he's youthful. I'm telling you, this guy's pretty cool." Funny. Actually, I saw a guy climbing a cell phone tower today, and I wasn't entirely sure if it was you or not.
No, I'm pretty much retired, guy.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay, cool. Because we'll get to that question 100% about retirement. Yeah. I mean, the first thing I really want to ask is, at what age or point in your life did you decide I'm going to climb buildings and jump off bridges?
Well, I'd always enjoyed doing physical things. I mean, growing up, we used to climb on top of the house, and the group of us there in the neighborhood we'd all go on top and jump off, and we'd keep going up higher and higher until somebody, got the record. And then we'd always go up just a little bit farther to make sure nobody broke it. So I've always enjoyed physical stuff, and we were always putting things together. As a matter of fact, I think my friends and I probably made one of the first zip lines out of an old telephone cable and the front forks off a bicycle. We sawed it off and put it over there on the wheel and went, had a great time. But yeah, it's always been fun. And then I went to school at UT in 1980 and started doing stunt work, around here. There was a guy named Mad Jack Fielden who did all kinds of crazy stuff selling furniture. And I told him I was a stuntman. I'd been to LA, which I had, but I hadn't really got any work out there. So I came back and we started doing all kinds of stuff. He just gave me carte blanche. I mean, I pretty much could do anything I wanted to do. You couldn't do that today because of the liability, but back then he let me have the run of the place, so to speak.
Who was the first person to test that zip line? Actually, I was curious. Was it you?
It was a guy named Bird, and Bird got his nickname because we sewed a couple of cardboard wings together, and we told Bird to go up on top of the house and jump off to see if they would work. And the poor kid, he was about 2 or 3 years younger than we were. So he would always, trying to be a tough guy, he would always do what we asked him to do. But Bird jumped off, and the wings weren't exactly working perfectly. They were a little aerodynamically suspect. But anyway, Bird was the first guy to try it. And he went out and came back, and, he forgot to let go and he ran into the tree. But other than that, it worked great.
You mentioned stunt work. Can you talk about kind of stunts you did or what movies you worked on?
Well, we started doing stunts here in Knoxville because, like I said, there was a guy named Mad Jack Field, and he was on Real People, a show that was on in the 70s and 80s. He was kind of highlighted because he was doing stuff that was really bizarre for the time. I mean, 2 women would come into the store and they'd both want, let's say, a chest of drawers. He'd take out a chainsaw and cut it in half and give each one of them half of it. That's the kind of stuff he did. And I thought I could kind of kick his game up a little bit. So we started doing bike jumps and car rolls and high falls and all kinds of stuff. And like I said, he pretty much would go along with any idea I had. As a matter of fact, up in La Follette, there was a place called, actually, it was a brand new mall. It was called the Woodson's Mall. And the Army was up there. The National Guard was up there doing a recruiting thing, and they had their tanks and their Jeeps and all that stuff. And I went up to him. I said, "Hey, how would you guys like to be in a Mad Jack commercial?" The captain said, "Hey, that sounds great." So we went over to Oak Ridge to the Armory, and we set up on top of this big knoll over there. We set up a full living room suite. I mean, it had couches and coffee tables and lamps and the whole thing. And Jack was saying how indestructible this furniture was. It was just incredible. There's some new stuff he got in. And about that time, a Sherman tank came over the hill and just destroyed the entire living room set. It was crazy. But that's the kind of stuff we did. And then, of course, he got in a little bit of trouble because the guys, Jack bought them all a case of beer, and they ran out of beer, and then they took an Army Jeep out to get some more and had an accident. And that got into Nashville, and Nashville said, "How in the world is Mad Jack feeling getting the Army to make commercials for him and all this stuff?" And it turned out okay in the end, but we just did all kinds of crazy stuff, man. It was nuts.
This is Mad Jack is his name?
Mad Jack Fielded.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whatever happened to Mad Jack? Are you still in touch with him?
Well, no, Mad Jack passed away. Unfortunately, Jack got into some substance abuse problems. And, he began to believe his hype. He began to believe that he was a real celebrity. And, he had some problems in Florida. He went down there and got arrested by breaking into a lady's house. It was just all really bad stuff. But he gave me the first break I ever had. And I wish he could have gotten some help because he was a really good guy, but we did some crazy stuff. Let me tell you.
I mean, it sounds like it. I mean, you were flipping cars and jumping bikes. Were any of these your vehicles, or were these just cars you would buy? Or
well, Jack I'd say, okay, we're gonna run a promotion, and if we can have some people out in the parking lot, we want to get 5,000 people, and if we get 5,000 people in the parking lot, we're going to slash prices like 50%. So we would have a draw, and they'd come from all over the South. They'd come from Virginia and Georgia and everywhere, because that was the range of the station that he was advertising on. And we would have 3,000 to 5,000 people out in the parking lot, and I'd be jumping bikes and rolling cars. And this is a long time ago. This is like 1980, 1979, 1980, something like that.
How old are you then?
I think in 80, I was 27.
So you're like my age. Yeah, 28, 27. That's my age. Yeah, 27, 28.
Yeah,
so
I was your age. Yeah. Yeah, I was your age.
So you see a building, your first building in Knoxville. So I was watching an interview with you recently that you had done. And the first building you had climbed was in Knoxville. Do you want to talk about that? Like, what made you decide, like, okay, I'm going to wake up.
We'd done a lot of stuff, and we'd gotten a lot of free press. They're always writing about us in the newspaper and everything. But I said, if we really want to top what we've done, at the time, there was like a building climbing, there were like three guys. George Willey climbed the World Trade Center. Dan Goodwin climbed the Sears Tower. And I said, let's do that around here. It doesn't have to be a huge building, but it was the tallest one in Knoxville. It was United American Bank at the time, which is now the First Horizon, I believe. And we had some equipment designed. A friend of mine down in Jacksboro made some equipment. And one morning I got attachment to the building and we started climbing. And it was a really slow news day. And my picture ended up being on the front page of almost every major newspaper in the United States. It was insane. I've got a picture of me from the Honolulu Bulletin from Hawaii. It was crazy. But we got a tremendous amount of press. And then Jack, Mad Jack, actually, I think his business really took off after that. We had people coming from hundreds and thousands of miles away just to go to Mad Jack's Furniture Warehouse.
And which building was this in Knoxville?
Well, now it's called the First Horizon. It was the United American Bank building at the time. If you're going over to Knoxville, it's the tallest building in the city. You can't miss it.
So you climb this one, and then you decide you want to raise the stakes a little bit.
Well, at that time, I thought that was a really inexpensive way, because Jack paid my fine. I think it was only about $500 or something. But you're getting $1 million worth of publicity for less than $1,000. I thought that was a pretty good trade-off. And I really wanted to go out to LA and become a stuntman. So I said, look, maybe I'll try something else and see if it works again. And I climbed the Peachtree Plaza Hotel in Atlanta, in a white tuxedo, and got a whole bunch of press for that. And then we just started doing it really all over the country. I moved to LA. I did the First Interstate Bank there, which at the time was the tallest building west of Mississippi. Then I did the Transamerica building in San Francisco. Then I went to Detroit and did the Renaissance Center. And then the final one I did was the Texas Commerce Tower in Houston, which is over 1,000 feet tall. So yeah, we just kept moving along.
I mean, you climbed all these buildings with what kind of equipment are we talking about here? Are these things you put together on your own, or do you buy this stuff?
I designed it. Yeah, it was the kind of thing where you try to make something that goes in the window washing tracks so you're locked in, but it gives you plenty of mobility, for climbing up it. Texas Commerce Tower took me 18 hours. I started at 6 o'clock in the morning and ended up getting across just to on the top about midnight.
Wow. Crazy. So how did you rest up there?
Well, I'm in a harness so I can sit. Using the bathroom was pretty tough because I couldn't just go in the white tuxedo. That would have been a yellow stain on. But no, I did that. And then, we wanted we wanted to separate ourselves from the rest of the herd, because if you go to LA to be a stunt person, there's guys and women getting off the train, off an airplane every day to do the same thing. And as my buddy put it, you got to extricate yourself from the masses. And that's what we intended to do with this stuff.
And you're using the window washer tracks and carabiners.
Well, if you look at a window washing track, it's got a rail on it that the window washers use, and they lock their equipment in there. So if the wind's blowing or something, it can't just make them start swaying. And I just designed equipment that fits inside there, that when I'm sitting on it, it's almost like a cam that locks you in. And then if you stand up on the one that you've got your feet resting in, then you can take that one and pull it up. And then you can rest and sit down and then pull the one up below. It's a slow process. I mean, you only go up about 1.5 feet at a time. And for a 1,000-foot building, that's a lot of steps, let me tell you.
I know I want to get into the Golden Gate Bridge a little later, but did you have any close calls climbing any of these buildings?
Yeah, I was climbing the Transamerica building, the pyramid, in San Francisco. And I went up there to do a recon on it. So I told the building manager that I was a writer for an architectural magazine. And so he gave me the run of the place. I mean, I could go anywhere and do it. As a matter of fact, the very top of it, where it comes to a peak, there's 200 steps that lead up to the beacon. And I climbed those steps and I put my name up there. I wrote my name. I'd love to go back and see if my name is still there. This was 1983. I'd love to go back and see, because there's been very, very few people who have done that. And anyway, I took out all the blueprints of the building. I made copies of them, and then I took them home and I fabricated sections of the building out of concrete, and I designed equipment that fit in those sections, so that we could have something that fit in there and lock. And unfortunately, the building had about a 10th revision before it was finalized, and I got a 6th revision. So every time I'm climbing, the building facade was actually 6 inches lower than it ended up being at the final. So every time I'm having to jump up and try to grab the next window ledge, which is about 6 inches out of my reach. And about the 43rd story, I got pretty tired. And so I put a cam in to rest. I didn't set it. You usually have to set one of those by pulling on it. And I didn't. I just leaned back on it and it fell out. And I had another one in, thank God, but it spun me around, and I'm looking down at the ground about 400 feet down, going, what the heck? So I actually stepped in about the 43rd floor, because that really scared me.
So that was definitely, I mean, I want to talk about fear a little bit. I mean, heights are people's number one fear most of the time. Spiders, of course, you get good things like that. And that's my greatest fear, because we've talked about skydiving sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
What's some advice you'd give to people about how to overcome fears?
Well, let's take the fear of heights. Can you go up to, let's say you're in a skyscraper and you're on the 50th floor or something. Can you walk up to the window and lean up against the window and look down, or does even that bother you? Because if that bothers you, you really got some, some work to do. Does it bother you to fly in an airplane? If that doesn't bother you, that if you've got that separation, that feeling of security that comes from being in the fuselage of the airplane, that's a good start. But now, could you go to the top of a building and actually lean over the top of it and look down? But a lot of people say it makes them want to jump. I never really understood that. When I was growing up, I'd always climb the tallest tree in the neighborhood, and I'd get up there and start shaking it. I mean, it just really seemed like fun to me. But I think if anything scares you, you've got to confront it in some way. You have to, let's say skydiving. Okay, a lot of people, that's on their bucket list because they just want to say, I've done it. And once they get in the airplane, and once they're in most cases, people go tandem to start with, just to get your feet wet and kind of see if you really have the stuff to go ahead and progress onward. But if you do that and you overcome that, and you know that all the equipment works and the odds of something going wrong are infinitesimal, they're so small. There's about 27 to 35 million skydives a year, and there's consistently between about 25 and 30 fatalities. And almost every one of those are operator problems. They're not mechanical in any way. They are not equipment related. They're simply something that the jumper didn't do correctly. But if you just want to go out the door and see if you're, see if you might like, that's a really good way to confront a fear without having a whole lot of risk involved.
So you're saying start like baby steps, start by trusting, like you're saying about, looking out from the top of a building, and then because you're basically telling me what to do because I'm still trying to get over my fear of flying here, and that's quite difficult.
I think baby steps is a good way to put it, because I mean, let's face it, if you're on top of a house and you're pretty secure and you look down and you really think about it, I mean, if you don't find yourself wanting to jump, then you're okay. And then try something else. Try something maybe a little bit higher, or try something that has got a lot of security and very little risk, whatever that might be. And just try to keep taking yourself up a little bit at a time. And eventually you'll get to a point where, you know what, this doesn't seem like a big deal at all.
You mentioned trusting your equipment, and I know you had an equipment issue. I want to get to the Golden Gate Bridge here. Yeah. You had quite the incident, and the footage is insane. It is absolutely insane. I cannot believe you survived this, let alone did it in the first place. Do you want to kind of give us an idea, events leading up to this, how you decided to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, and then the incident in itself?
Well, I started skydiving because I went to stunt school in LA, and you can't, if you go in for an interview, you can't tell them you don't know how to do something. So you tell them you can, and you go learn how after that, So I started skydiving, and I had about 15 skydives. And then I saw this guy, Carl Banish, who was jumping off fixed objects. I mean, he was jumping off buildings, antennas, spans, bridges, and earth, base. He's a base jumper. And he was the first base jumper. Carl started the sport. And I'm in West LA working at Hillcrest Country Club. And I want to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, that seems to me like the ultimate base jump. So I'm going, boy, I sure would like to meet Carl. And somebody told me Carl lived down the road, in Hawthorne, California. So at the time, believe it or not, there was such thing as phone books. And I looked up Carl Banish in the phone book, and his name was in the phone book. I rang the number, and he answered the phone. I mean, that's just crazy. You can't imagine these days. But I started talking to him, and he was the nicest guy in the world. And he taught me how to base jump over the telephone. He taught me what I should do and how I should do it, and the right size pilot chute, and how much time to take before I threw out my pilot chute and all that. Unfortunately, Carl passed away over in Norway on the Troll Wall before he got to see me jump off the Golden Gate Bridge with the instructions he had given me. But we went up there. I think it was my birthday, September the 8th. And I jumped off the North Tower, which is the one that touches the Sausalito side, as you're going north over the bridge from the city. And it's weird because we did about 3 months of recon on this thing. And we finally found the bottom portion. We could get a ladder and climb up onto that tower. And there was a maintenance door that they had left open. So we got inside the Golden Gate Bridge, and I've got some incredible footage of the inside of the bridge, which most people have never seen. And then we started trying to find out how to get to the top. And all these tubes were riveted together because it was built in like 1936, and there was no welding. It was just all putting these tubes together. There's 88 of them, and they've got ladders in them, and you can climb all the way to the top in all 88 of them. So we're climbing to the top and then just seeing nothing. There's nothing there. And then one day my buddy and I are climbing up in there, and he looks across and he said, "Ron, I see a steel cable over there." He climbs over and he looks down, and there's an elevator there. So we climb down, we get in the elevator, we go all the way to the top. And sure enough, there's a hatch that opens up, and we are now standing on the top of the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, it was just incredible.
It's been quite the sight.
Oh, it was unbelievable because the fog had rolled in. And it looked like you were flying at about 30,000 feet. You could see the city over there. The fog was below you. You could see Alcatraz in the distance. And we go, okay, we got it figured out now. What my buddy did, God rest his soul, he passed away about 5 years ago, but he took the lock apart on the elevator. He took micrometer settings on the pins for the lock, and he made a key. So now all we had to do was go up and open the door and walk in.
Oh my gosh.
And the elevator is very small. The elevator was only about 2 feet by 3 feet. And that's the elevator they used to take paint up, and there's a storage locker up there, and it's very cool. The interior of the Golden Gate Bridge is very cool, but it was very small, so we could only take one person up at a time with their gear. So the day that we went up there, we had I don't know if you remember the old television cameras, the ones that weighed about 50 pounds, and they were huge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, one of my best friends, Greg Melton, was involved in that caper, and he was just a heck of a videographer. But he went up on top of the Golden Gate Bridge with me with that camera, which we had difficulty getting it in and out. It was so big. And then the first jump went off basically flawless. And then we decided, maybe let's try to do the other tower. So we went to the one in the middle of the water, and a couple of guys from the drop zone thought it was very cool. We had video and everything. So we took them down there, Richard Burke and Spider McKenna. We went down, and we wanted to duplicate the jump, the three of us, from the one down there. And that's when all hell broke loose. I mean, we just had problem after problem. Ended up, Richard went off and flew back into the bridge and broke a rib and punctured his lung. And then we couldn't see him. We don't know if he landed in traffic. We didn't know what happened to him. But I went off. I said, okay, Spider, I'm going to go off the other side because maybe the wind shifted or something. You throw ribbons off to see which way the wind's coming. And that is the only time. And I've been to San Francisco a lot of times, and I've never seen the wind either not coming in at about 20 knots or going out at 20 knots. It was absolutely still. So I go to the other side, and I jump off, and his parachute had been packed in reverse, and it flew him right back into the bridge. And that was the problem. And I'm thinking, well, the wind blew him back, and I'll do it over here and I'll be okay. Well, it happened to me too. I had a reverse opening, and it flew back in the bridge, and I delayed just a little bit longer before I opened. And my chute actually got hung up on a catwalk up there about 200 feet above the sidewalk below us.
So you're still 200 feet above the
that?
bridge. You're still 200 feet above the sidewalk, which means how far?
I'm 200 feet above the road level.
Oh my gosh.
I'm 200 feet above the road level, and I'm looking down at the sidewalk. So I can't do a cutaway like that because I'd kill myself, landing on the sidewalk. So by that time, the Coast Guard's circling around, and there's Coast Guard boats in the water, and all kinds of shit's going on. And I'm saying, how am I going to get out of this? I got myself in this mess. What do I need to do? And while I'm hanging there, Spider, who at the time had like 10,000 skydives and several base jumps in downtown LA, I'm hanging there, and I hear this whooshy noise. And I look down, and Spider's in free fall going by me. And he opened up about 200 feet above the water. And we had 5 rescue boats in the water. One of them got him and took him over to Sausalito. And they're watching me over there on TV as, as all hell's breaking. They're over there having a daiquiri or whatever they're drinking. But I'm hanging there, and I figure, I got to get myself. I don't want to risk anybody else's life. I don't want to have any, to be saved off this thing. I need to figure out how to get out of here. So I said, okay, what I can do is I can release one side of my harness, and that'll kind of put me at an angle, and I can bounce off the bridge. So I bounced off 1, 2, 3 times. And on the third bounce, as far out as I could go, I did the cutaway on the second cape well, and I fall right by the sidewalk. I could see it. It's like 20 feet away or maybe even less. And so I'm falling out, and I land in the moat. There's a seawall that separates the base of the tower from the ocean so ships don't hit it and everything. And there's a moat there that the water never exchanges. So there's dead birds and oil and all kinds of stuff in here. And I hit that, and I landed in it. Oh, and then I can't move much. So I take my rig off, and I let it go, and it sank to the bottom. It may still be there for all I know.
It probably is. They don't clean it.
Probably is. And I'm now in the moat. The ladder to get out of the moat, it's sort of low tide. The ladder is probably 6 feet above me. So now I have to swim down like a porpoise and come up as fast as I can and try to reach up and grab that ladder to get out of there. And I didn't do it. I didn't make it the first couple of times, but the third time I just swam as strong as I could. And then I finally got a hold of it, and I'm almost dead tired. And I'm climbing up this ladder. I get to the top of the seawall, and as I go over, I see a red light spinning. It's a Coast Guard waiting on me. So they arrested me, and they took me out, put me in with a highway patrolman. And we're going downtown. They're going to arrest me, of course. And the highway patrolman turned off his radio, and he said, "You know what? I probably shouldn't say this, but that was really damn cool."
You did. I mean, you had quite some few run-ins with the law, for sure.
I did. And those guys were just, I mean, they kind of, now these days it would probably be different, but back then it was just some kind of silly caper you were doing, and you weren't trying to hurt anyone or anything. And they treated me great. They really did.
Did you get jail time for any of this or fines?
The only time I was, well, that's funny you should say that. When I went back to court for doing that caper, I was fined $175 for throwing objects off the bridge. The object, of course, being me. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty weird.
Oh, wow.
But, I did spend a night in jail in Detroit, and that was, whoa, that was crazy.
Yeah.
But other than that, my buddy Andy he was on the Los Angeles Police Department. He was a detective, and he knew the ins and outs of the legal system. And he would always go in and arrange my bail and everything before I even got to the jail. It was cool.
So what happened after the Golden Gate Bridge stunt? Were you like, I'm done, I don't want to do this kind of jumping or climbing anymore? Or had you had enough, or did that kind of fuel your desire to do more?
It did, because that kind of, I thought it was exhilarating. And back then, you're young and stupid, and you don't know how close you came to killing yourself, which I probably did. But then I wanted to do a jump off the Coronado Bridge in San Diego from a moving car. And we decided it'd be better if we had a limousine and I could jump out of the sunroof as we're driving over. That was really cool.
That's on video too. I've seen that.
Yeah, that was really a lot of fun.
There were no snags with that one, were there?
No, and we tested it first. We rented a Mustang convertible, and I went across the bridge and did that from a Mustang convertible. And we said, okay, it's very doable, so let's rent the limo and get everything set up, and climb up out of the sunroof, and the whole scenario was just crazy.
Now, you've done buildings, you've jumped off bridges. I know you do regular climbing too.
Yeah, my claim to fame is back in '86, I beat out two of the best climbers in the world for a Buick commercial, Ron Kalk and Todd Skinner. Yeah.
For a Buick commercial?
Buick commercial, yeah.
Did you film it?
Did, sure
did.
Oh
my gosh. Yeah. I don't think I've seen that.
Well, I tried to get a copy of it, and I can't find it. It's a long, long time ago in a universe far, far away.
I'm sure we can find it.
Yeah, if I think it was Sundog was the production company. I don't know if they're still around, but yeah, they went around Southern California for like 3 months, doing all these clips and stuff. And yeah, I was a decent climber. I mean, I wouldn't put myself in the category of Alex Honnold. That kid's incredible.
Yeah.
But I was pretty good at it. I'd do like a 512, 512 lead was about the best I did back then. But it was a different rating system because we didn't have A, B, C, and D. We just were climbing on rocks, and they'd been rated, but we weren't specific about that. We just enjoyed going up and trying to get up a rock.
I have a question here that it might answer itself, or I already know the answer to it. I was going to say, at what point did you decide to stop? But I don't think you've really stopped. I mean, maybe climbing the buildings, but at the same time, you work out 7 days a week.
Yeah, and I just turned 69. I feel really good. We're trying to work on this project called the Ageless Project I have, and that's our healthcare system and the processed foods we're eating, and the fact that we're becoming obese at a crazy rate. It's not going to be long until 40% of the population are going to be obese. We've been working on a project called the Ageless Project to kind of turn that around. What causes us to get older? What things are we not making? What chemicals are we not making that would help us, have a little more longevity? So I've been working on that, and I'm working with a guy to try to get a sizzle done for the show. And I would love to try to break the distance record in wingsuiting. It's only about 20 miles, which to me doesn't seem like a lot.
20 miles
Yeah.
in the wingsuit?
Yeah. The kid went out at 37,000 feet and he actually went across almost 20 miles before he landed.
And what's your plan?
Just to break it, I think you got to break it about 10% to have it official. So we go out from 40,000 maybe. And I've got some really good guys working on a wingsuit, because I think the one that he used had a lot of drag on it because there was an oxygen mask and the hose was hanging out. And, there were some things about it that we probably think we could do a little bit better and maybe give us some more distance. So
this is the future project of Ron Broyles that you're working on right now.
If I live, I'm going to start working on that one. Yeah.
Hey man, John Glenn was still flying the space shuttle in his was 60s, 70s, I think. So
well, Chuck Yeager did
too.
Yeah, Chuck Yeager was in the aircraft. I don't know if he was flying it into his 80s.
So
it's just a lot of it's a state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
You and I worked out at the gym quite a bit, and there's these guys in there 30, 35 years old who are talking about the good old days and how old they were now. And you just want to slap these kids. You have no idea. And most people never, ever push themselves to the limit anyway. You get in there and you do a couple of things and you feel like you're a little bit tired and you want to quit. And, you got to go one more. You got to do one more thing and push it one more rep or one more set, just to see how far you can go. And that's not easy.
And that's one of my favorite things about you, Ron, is nothing is impossible for you. I mean, you may be getting older, but you're definitely still young. And your own mind and your own heart, and you're always constantly motivating people too. I always see you motivating people, and you always want people to do their best and live their best life. And that's one of the big things I respect about you for sure.
Well, thank you, Kyle. I appreciate that. And I'm training a couple of guys now. And once again, if we don't do something about what processed foods have done to our bodies, and our healthcare system is so screwed up, it's the most expensive healthcare system in the world, and we continue to get more and more sick. We're getting sicker all the time. Metabolic disease is just killing us. Diabetes, knee and hip replacements coming on because of the obesity. Just all kinds of problems that are chronic in a lot of cases, are because we're inactive and we're eating crap. And that's something I really want to push. I've got a lecture planned, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but in 1876, we ate 5 pounds of sugar. That was the average American consumption of sugar in 1876. Now it's 150 pounds. That's a human being. And you are not going to metabolize that by sitting at a desk or even being reasonably active. You're really going to have to either do one or two things: work yourself to death in the gym, which I don't advise, or modify your diet and eat real food. When you see artificial this and artificial that in ingredients, that's exactly what it is. It's something that's concocted to taste like something else. And it has, in some cases, or a lot of cases, almost no nutritional value whatsoever.
There's so much stuff we're putting in our body. We don't even read on the label where it comes from, especially, when you go to restaurants or things like, you don't even really know what you're eating half the time.
Exactly. Well, there's a thing called, the acronym is GRAS, generally regarded as safe. And that's things that companies can put in there. And because everybody's using it, and it's been used over a long period of time, it's generally regarded as safe. And they don't even have to tell you that it's in there. There used to be 200 of those ingredients. Now there's almost 6,000.
Oh my gosh.
And if you're telling me there's 6,000 things you can put in my food and none of them are going to harm me, I got to tell you, you're out of your mind. And most of them are put in there to extend shelf life.
So healthy diet, right, is a key to
healthy
success.
Diet and a healthy mind. I mean, I'm a person of faith, and I believe that there's a power in the universe that you can tap into and use in your life to give you the best you possible. I believe that. And, I'm doing okay at this point. So the thing about it is, if you got to work at both ends. You got to work the nutritional aspect. You've also got to work the fitness aspect, and you've got to work the mental aspect and the spiritual aspect. If you go around all day going, I can't do this and I can't do that, guess what? You probably can't. It's probably not going to work for you very well. But if you just go around and saying, okay, this is a challenge for me, but I'm going to make an attempt to do it. And if I can't do it this time, I'm going to make another attempt later, and I'm going to change up the way I do it, and we'll see if that works. And that's usually the formula for success. You don't learn anything by failure. You learn almost everything good by success. You learn everything by failure. You fail, and then you got to fail better. And then you feel better. And then pretty soon you're succeeding because you failed so many times. You've tried so many different ways. Now you can do it right.
That's great advice, Ron. And I know we're almost out of time here, but I wanted to see if you wanted to have any last thoughts about things you've gone through in your life, any future advice to give to people.
The only advice that I try to give my friends is almost everything in life is fixable short of murder. And by that, I mean, if you're going down a wrong path, you can change that. If you've got bad thinking about your life or about your relationships or whatever, you can change that. It's doable. But you've got to start really being intentional, and you have to have focus. With intent and focus, I think you do just about anything you want to.
Great. Thank you, Ron. That's awesome stuff. And I can't wait to share your story with the rest of the world as well. I get all this, coming from you being friends, but I know there's a lot of people out there who could definitely hear what you have to say. So I appreciate your time, Ron. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're quite welcome, Kyle. Thanks for inviting me on, man. I've enjoyed it.
Of course. All right. I'm going to end the recording here
You bet.
right about now.